and a warm welcome to you as well from myself. As Emily said, I'm Jane Allan, Head of Communications. I'm going to talk a little bit about the industry, the sector, the size of the sector, and a particular document which you'll find on the table in front of you called it was a manifesto that we actually published last year, so that you'll find this actually on the table in front of you, which I will make reference to, and please do take it away with you and have a read. It's not a massively intense document, but you will actually, what I'm going to talk about today does refer back to that, so please do take a copy with you. So we're going to talk about the size of the retail motor industry. Some of you in the room, I know, obviously are involved in the sector. Some of you are new to information here today. So I just want to give you an indication of the size of the sector. So 146 billion generated in turnover per year. So you can see that's a major contributing factor to the economy of the UK. So 25 billion gross value added. And if you think about all the touch points that you have with our industry, there's probably not a day goes by where you're not affected by something that we're going to be talking about today, the retail automotive sector. So we're not just talking about car sales and maintenance, we're talking about distribution, we're talking about supply chain, we're talking about goods deliveries, bus services, almost everything that you come into contact every day, and that's why you're seeing 25 billion. Now obviously these figures were probably from about 18 months ago, 2 years ago, so that may have changed, but it still is a massive, massive part of your everyday life. So do bear that in mind when we're talking about the retail automotive industry. So some more big numbers, just to get a bit of interaction in the room here. How many UK registered cars, motorcycles and trucks do you think are on our roads transporting goods and services? Just an indicator, it's up in the millions. How many?
36 million.
Was that a guess? Well done.
They're all on the M25.
Okay, in 2010, how many people do you think were employed in the retail automotive sector? Any guesses in the room? No?
6 million.
500,000. And of the 65,000 businesses in the UK automotive sector, what percentage do you think employ 10 people or less? And we call those a micro business. What percentage do you think employ 10 people or less?
30%.
Any other? Higher, lower?
65 to 70. Maybe higher than that actually. It's quite high than that.
So again, bear this in mind, we're not just talking about the big dealership groups, we're also talking about small, independent, family-run businesses as well when we're talking about the whole sector. So you'll see the difficult challenges that we have when we talk about that being part of the retail sector when we're talking today. So in this document here, the manifesto, we set out 5 key challenges for our sector. I'm not going to read them, we're actually going to talk about them in a little bit more detail. But the 5 challenges that we've concentrated on, which are a lot of our project work that we've got running through, supported by the UKCS, UK Commission for Employment and Skills, and they are actually part funding a lot of these projects, and we'll talk about those as we go through today. A lot of what you're going to hear from Emily with the Careers Advice and Guidance is also supported by that, and that's the investment that your government is making in our sector to actually make changes to some of these challenges that we'll talk about today. So, this is probably the biggest area that we have a challenge in. I mean, this beautiful academy we're in today, you must agree, may change your perception slightly if you've come from outside sector. We're not talking about under the arches, we're not talking about, probably 50, 60 years ago, we could have said that we were really struggling, but we've made huge leaps and bounds in technology, and I think this is one of the biggest areas that we've got a challenge in. And the things that we're doing are the public-facing register, which I'm going to talk about in a moment, which you may or may know about, may or may not know about. But also it's actually putting consumer confidence back in the sector as well, and we're doing a lot of work with the government on that as well. So, changing perceptions. Next month, on April the 2nd, we will be launching our publicly searchable professional register. So what that means is we have around about 40,000 individuals who are going to appear on this professional register, and they're going to be public-facing register that you can search for by individual or business type and in location. And those people are signed up to a professional code of conduct. They're committed to CPD. They have the right skill sets. You don't get on that register just by ticking a box. You have to go through particular types of training and particular type of accreditation in order to be able to reach onto this register. And I'll show you a little video in a minute about how people actually get on there. We're actually going to talk about, or the next step for that as well, is the professional reassurance scheme for businesses. And what that means is, we talked about the professional register, but for a business who actually employs 50% of their staff or more, actually have access to the employer recognition scheme. So they get extra exposure, they get the plaque on the wall. When we actually develop the professional register further, there'll be more details, more search criteria that will actually be available for employers. So it's an extension to the professional register in that respect. But probably one of the biggest challenges we've got is actually changing public perception through what the media actually promote. There's just an example here, and some of you in the room will recognise some of these characters. I was actually, when I did a bit of research, actually finding this particular image here, which is a typical one that we see perpetuated in soap operas, is the Under the Arches. But I was pleasantly surprised to see that he was actually wearing the right safety equipment, which gave me a little bit of hope. But it is this thing, and this particular one down here, this was a heading in a local newspaper, which absolutely incensed me, and I actually contacted the newspaper and said to them, the article that sat behind this was actually a really good article. It was actually talking about somebody who put their own hand in their pocket and went and got a skill for her own purposes, though if she ever broke down or she could help her family, she'd actually gone and got a qualification. But that's how they rewarded her. And I thought it particularly incensed me. And I said, it's just lazy journalism. It's not bothering to actually find out the facts. So it's actually working with people, the likes of the BBC or any local journalists, that we can actually get on side to talk about the good things that happen in our industry. All too often it's about the poor things and the poor perception. And also this kind of imagery. Again, I'm working with a lot of the trade magazines and trade publications, and this is one I actually pulled out of a trade publication. We often hear about, I've spent a lot of time in schools and colleges and talking to careers advisors about, do you get a lot of requests from women to come into the sector? And they do, but quite often it's their caregivers or their parents or the people who have influence and don't want them coming into the trade because they're perpetuating this sexist image. So it's something we do have to work on. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to play, we had a little recruitment video that I'm going to play about when we were trying to get people from sector to sign up to the professional register. So I'm just going to play this little video clip for you.
Gain the public recognition you deserve. It's time to become a registered professional. First things first, the IMI is the Institute of the Motor Industry. We are the leading professional association for people working in the automotive sector today. We are proud to represent thousands of professionals just like you. The motor industry matters. We all rely on cars, buses, lorries or motorbikes for travel and to transport the everyday food, goods and materials we all take for granted. The UK wouldn't work without the automotive industry. It all adds up to over 65,000 businesses, over 500,000 jobs, and is worth £146 billion to the UK every year. By recognising achievements and developing standards for everyone in the industry, we can grow real customer confidence and create more business. This is why we have created the Professional Register. So what does this mean for you? Well, by becoming a registered professional, your colleagues, employers and most importantly your customers will clearly be able to see that you have the right skills, the right knowledge, the right experience and work to an ethical code of conduct. Being on the register assures your customers and your colleagues that you are continually keeping up to date with learning, new skills and working practices. This ensures that you are able to make the most of your expertise right now and that you can continue to learn, improving your skills as your career develops into the future. You can join now. There is an entry level to suit you, whether you're in a technical or non-technical role, in management, sales, customer service or administration. We can help find the right route for you. It's a great idea and it really makes sense. So how do you join? It's really simple. Just go to imiregister.org.uk. You may have already met the required standard if you are a member of one of these groups. Don't worry if you can't see yourself on this list. Just go to the website and we will help you on the way to being a registered professional. From April 2013, your customers, colleagues and employers will be able to check online if you're a registered professional. This will give them the assurance that they are dealing with a person or business that is recognised for delivering a highly professional, competent, trustworthy service. By joining today, you will become part of an organisation that is setting the standards of professionalism within the motor industry now and into the future. If you love automotive and love your career, join today. The IMI Professional Register. Good for your customers, good for the industry, and good for you.
Okay, so what we were aiming here is actually to get to those that are working in the sector, to get them to sign up to the professional register. This particular website here will switch on the 2nd of April, and this will be the consumer-facing. So it's been a recruitment tool at the moment, but the imiregister.org.uk will actually become the customer-facing register, and we're doing final testing back in the office now on that facility. So, sorry. Okay, so the next bit we're going to talk about, the next challenge, is attracting and retaining talent, which is the major reason I'm here today. It's about getting people to understand the huge breadth of career opportunities that are actually in the automotive sector. And a lot of people don't understand, as I said, they're not just technical roles, they're the sales and management roles, they're parts and servicing. It's not just technical roles that we're talking about. And Emily's going to be talking a lot more about the careers advice and guidance, but so far we've hit 70,000 individuals in the last year actually giving information to through the Auto City website. But when we actually talk about apprenticeships, National Apprenticeship last week, for those who are involved, anybody actually get involved in National Apprenticeship Week last week? Again, we're in the top we're in the top 5 sectors who actually employ apprentices. And again, it's people quite often just think about technical roles, but as you can see, this is just giving you an idea of the kind of apprenticeships. It's not just about the technical apprenticeships. But I think that's quite important that we're actually in the top 5. And even during difficult economic climates, we're actually seeing our industry is actually attracting apprentices, but we have to look at the kind of calibre of apprentices, and that's what we're going to be talking a little bit about today. So it's not just about numbers, it's about quality. And the other things we're doing to attract and retain talented individuals, this is a lot of what we're going to be talking about today. So as I said, the IMI actually do a number of different programmes through different channels. So we're actually working, as said, with schools and colleges. We work with the manufacturing and the dealers and the dealer network. So there's lots of different ways that we do things, and we have different products appealing to different age groups and sectors. So Emily will talk a bit more about those in a bit more detail. The current and future skills needs. Obviously, in order for us to be able to know where the gaps are, we had to do quite an extensive amount of research. So we actually did a series of reports, or a series of research that we actually published reports on last year, and we made those available through our website and actually published the research findings. And it was an overarching report with 12 subsectors showing where the skills gaps were. And that's a lot of what came out of here, was saying, let's have a look at where the skills gaps were. Let's have a look and see how technology is going to affect those skills gaps going forward. What kind of people do we need to attract into the industry to be able to fill those gaps over the next 5 to 10 years? So the other thing that we're doing to actually fill those current and future skills needs are things like the CPD offer. So as you heard, with the professional register, in order to be able to be on the professional register, you have to keep your skills up to date. So we developed CPD partnerships with leading providers, some of them manufacturers, some of them are actually training providers, things like the Trading Standards Institute we have a partnership with, who we offer training. That could be anything from an e-learning to actually a one-week programme with a particular training provider. So it's a real breadth of offer that we actually have with the IMI. And this is, again, as a result of our members telling us what they wanted access to. So a lot of independent garages don't have access to manufacturer training. So through these partnerships that we have with those manufacturers, we can offer training back to the sector at a discounted rate if they're on the professional register. So on, I don't know if there are actually on your tables, yes there are. We've actually produced this CPD guide, and you'll see from the breadth of courses that are in here, the amount of things that we've actually developed with CPD partners. It's an extensive offer that we actually have. And I think also the other thing to bear in mind is, what we was talking about, that 85% of people who actually worked in the sector work for micro businesses. So we have to make sure that the flexibility is there. So things like e-learning. So you don't have to take time out of your business to learn a new skill or keep that skill up to date. There's lots of things that you can do online or distance learning that you can actually earn CPD credits for. And even things like being in the room today or reading an article, there's lots of ways that you can earn CPD. It's not necessarily about paying out huge amounts of money for courses. It's about being flexible. Obviously, we've talked about the 50,000 people on the professional register by 2014. So when it goes live next month on the 2nd of April, we have around about 40,000. So we're part way there, but we've still got a year to go to get that extra 10,000 people on. But it's through creating consumer awareness that people are going to see the benefits of being on there, and that's what will be the next campaign that we'll do, is a consumer-facing campaign. We also had a look at ATA. Has anybody in the room heard of ATA? Okay, so Automotive Technician Accreditation, which was obviously brought in around about 7 years ago now. It's actually done exceptionally well, but it had to be developed again to react to the way that people conduct their business, the way that people actually learn. So then it was taken from doing one particular accreditation route, which could have taken a couple of days, into small bite-sized chunks of learning. So employers being able to release their technicians or staff for smaller bite-sized chunks of learning. And it also allows us to develop those modules more and keep pace with technology. So instead of developing a whole route, we can actually develop small chunks. So that's another piece of work that's been ongoing over the last 2 years and is continuing now. We've just finished another pilot phase with two particular routes. And of course, we're continuing developing qualifications as well, so apprenticeship frameworks that we're doing and different qualifications. So it's about tying that whole thing together. And you'll hear from the guys at BMW later about how technology is moving on at a rapid pace. And if we don't develop the qualifications for the future skills needs, then we need to keep pace with that technology as well. So management and leadership. There's a quite startling statistic up there of only 15% of managers employed in the sector actually have a management qualification. Now, this is not unusual in itself, because normally what people do, we're very good at promoting people within the industry. So you might start out as an apprentice, you become a technician, and you develop up through the route, and that's not unusual, and that is a good promotion. But what actually happens is then people are in a management position but don't have the proper skill set to actually deliver and give a good return on investment, really, or look at ways that they can actually have a better grasp on the opportunities within their own business. So we're working a lot to give flexible management and leadership opportunities and solutions to the sector. And again, thinking about that 85%, we can offer qualifications, but we're also offering accreditations and CPD learning and online learning and small modules. We're also launched last month an ATA trait tool, which is about selection for our sector. So when people are recruiting, we've seen you have to ask specific kind of questions and look for particular traits to get people into our sector. So this tool has been developed by people in sector to actually drill down to the kind of qualities that you want people in management and leadership roles. I'm just actually going to hand over to Steve here, because we've been doing a lot of work with the major players in the sector on management and leadership to try and get some common standards. So Steve, I don't know if you want to add a little bit here.
Morning. Just in case you didn't know, you'll probably see my face on the magazine actually. So I'm the Chief Executive of the IMI, but I also was, up until the end of the year, After Sales Director of BMW, and I was responsible for this place amongst other things. So I've kind of got a double interest in this. Yeah, I mean, the situation with management and leadership is, currently, we have a very large groundswell of interest around this part of what we do. And initially that came from something we call the HRD Forum, the HR Directors Forum, and these are the HR directors of the big dealer groups, the Sytners, the Inchcapes, the Pendragons, Ford Retail and so on. What they were saying to us is, we have individuals who work in our business and they work for a particular brand, and we put them through all the manufacturer training, and then when they move to another brand, that doesn't have any value to the other brand. There's no way of saying that, there's no accreditation attached to it outside of the brand, so we have to start all over again. And it kind of affects the transportability, if you like, of good people from one brand to another. And it's also a massive duplication. So they were asking us if we could develop something which would be a kind of a common currency around management and leadership. And what they've bought into, basically, is AMA. Automotive Management Accreditation, because I think that commonly they've understood that what that contains, it doesn't matter whether you top and tail it as a brand and do your own brand-specific stuff, but they've recognised that the core traits that are within that, it doesn't matter which brand you're talking about, these are the things you need to run a business and to lead people. And as a result of that forum, we've brought in a number of manufacturers, and we're currently talking to no less than 24 brands about this common currency that we're developing. And they're all at different levels, depending on the sort of management and leadership offering they have. But they're all looking at we're offering free mapping so that they can actually measure up their existing management and leadership offering against the AMA core traits, if you like, and we're very encouraged that we're seeing a huge amount of support in that area. It's a little bit of conjecture as to why this might be that it's all happening at the same time, because AMA's been out there a little while. But I think that, and BMW are an example of this, who are working with us. I think some of it is about the fact that people have recognised that when you're, and God knows I've had enough experience of this, when you have a dealer principal's job, let's say, all the same familiar faces turn up to apply for it. And so all the brands are fishing in the same pond, and it's a rather stagnant pond, it has to be said. We're not attracting new talent into the industry, and we're not always developing the right talent in the people that we have. So I think that most of the brands and the big dealer groups have realised that actually we've come through an incredibly difficult situation, and the people who've been least affected by it are the ones, the businesses that have been least affected are the ones that have got the strongest leadership. And I think everybody realises if we don't want the same pattern to repeat itself, we have to do something about that. So that's where we are at the moment, and I think it's really a very much a case of watch this space, because I think quite quickly we're getting to a point where we're going to start developing. We've got certain brands that are closer to moving ahead with this than others, but this is pretty much across the industry really. So yes, we're very encouraged by that, and I think that's a very positive development. Is that good enough? Is it? Thank you. Okay.
Thanks, Steve. And I think that's one of the things we're trying to get across is, it's not just necessarily the technical people, but there are real opportunities for the future managers and leaders of the sector. So it's about attracting the right kind of talent, as Steve said, into the sector. So the last point on there is ROI, and that's something we're going to talk about now. So again, one of the challenges is people often see upskilling and training as a cost to the business rather than a benefit. So the next big challenge for us is actually to prove that actually investing in skills and training actually benefits the business. About 2 years ago now, we actually engaged Leicester University to conduct a couple of research, return on investment research pieces for us. And that was actually provided us with some quite amazing statistics when you look at this. So return on investment, we worked with 5 key players in the sector, one of which was Mercedes, and we actually did one with Parts Advisors. This was with All Parts. But you can see the return on investment here between 97 and 187%. There was they could show significant benefits to the business that investing in ATA actually showed. And it's through, as Steve said, consistent training. You're training people to the same standards all the time. And by doing common standards, you're actually making people all work the same way. So you're actually having a return on investment, be that through making sure that they were having the right skill set to sell the right part to the customer the first time, ask the right questions, give the right information, and just general customer service levels. So there was a complete turnaround. So we're using those now, and we're actually going into the next phase, which is part of, again, the UK CES, is actually using that money to invest in further ROI studies. And these are quite major studies. I mean, you'll see four areas there. So we're looking at apprenticeships, management and leadership, heavy vehicle sector, and accident repair. But what we're not just looking at those sectors, it's across all different business types. So we might have apprenticeships in a small garage, but also a major provider, and in the heavy vehicle sector. So it really is a matrix of all different sizes of businesses that we're looking at. So when we actually give these results, which will be towards the end of the year, they're transferable back to lots of different kinds of businesses throughout the sector. It's not just concentrating on the big brands or the major suppliers. It really does go right the way across the sector, across the 12 subsectors. So, but those are the 4 that we're concentrating on now. And we're in the information gathering stage at the moment. So we're getting a lot of support from business from that. And as I said, we'll be communicating those results later on in the year. So really, how can you help us? And I would say, you know, take the manifesto home, have a look at it. It is on the website because there are limited copies on here, but it is a quick read. But it's, you know, the calls to action that you'll see on here. And practically everybody in the room can take something away and help us with what we're doing here. Whether you're a careers advice and guidance, or where you're talking to somebody and just tell them about the breadth of opportunities. But also we encourage you to, you know, point people in our direction if they've got good stories. We're happy to try and get those good messages out. You know, we've got a gentleman from the press at the back of the room. We are here to try and get the good messages out. Give a good balanced approach. Yes, there are challenges, but we're trying to address those challenges. And use all the free resources. Emily's going to talk about the massive amount of free resources that we've got to support you to make sure that we get the consistent messaging out to those that have influence over future careers choices. Also, I'd say use our social media networks. We've talked a little bit about today using Twitter. I mean, we've seen enormous engagement from individuals. And if we have a bit of time today, I know we were running a bit late, but if we have a little bit of time, I'll talk a bit about social media, but I know that the gentleman from BMW are actually going to talk about that as well, about the impact of social media on our sector, about how we can get engagement from people from 12 up to 99. And it really is a massive demographic of people who engage in social media. But we've also got lots of activities that are going on with social media, and we'll have some touch points about where they are during the day. But if we have time, I will actually come back and show you that video a little bit later. So that's all for me from now. I am actually going to hand over to Emily, but before I go, does anybody have any questions for me?
Just the one thing from me, Gary Clark from West Suffolk College of Various Ways. Higher apprenticeships, is there a move? Because I agree with you, we've got lots of level 1 and level 2, but we're lacking really.
There are, I think there are 3 routes at the moment for higher apprenticeships, so yes, they are there.
Yeah,
Yes, I believe so. But like anything, they're part funded. They'll have to be, obviously supported by the employer. But as we've seen, there's massive changes gone on with the budget about skills. There's massive changes in those. So we could say yes, but that could change next week. So yes, I think they're definitely there. They're available to use. But again, a lot of the take up is to do with the funding. But obviously, we don't control the funding. We actually take the qualifications, what's needed for the sector. But there are a lot of changes going on, as I said, with the Doug Richard review, the Hesseltine review, and obviously things that have come out with Matt Hunkel obviously trying to support particular apprenticeship routes. So I think that is changing, and we may see developments in that going forward with definite pushes on apprenticeships, certainly at those higher levels, to attract people to come to us rather than going to university. So, yes. Anybody else? Okay, well, I may see you a little bit later, depending on how we run on time. But then I shall hand over to Emily. Thank you very much for your attention.